When times are tough, people tend to do crazy things in order to make some money. But some people cross some boundaries and end up doing things that get them in trouble. Such is the case of bank robbers. For a multitude of different reasons, there have been times in history in which certain individuals gathered a crew and performed criminal acts in order to get their pockets full of cash. While the stories of most of these criminals end up in them getting captured, there are still some people who got away with their tricks like a modern Payday 2 match. In today's video, we'll be looking at the biggest bank robberies ever. We'll find out what led people to do the things they did, and more importantly, we'll find out just how much cash they stole. Our first entry is the scandalous Bitcoin heist. We start our list with a very contemporary heist, the biggest Bitcoin heist in Iceland. And for those of you who don't know what Bitcoin is, well, I'd recommend you watch a video or run a Google search. Seriously, it's kinda big. His name was Sindri Thor Stephenson, and despite sounding like a Skyrim character, he and his gang went and raided 4 data warehouses in Iceland. Iceland has become a popular destination for people who store and mine Bitcoin, as its hydroelectric and geothermal energy is not as expensive as it is in other places. Some data firms leave their facilities open for their personnel to do admin tasks, and that's how Stephenson and his gang were able to go in and steal some computers. This was done sometime between December 2017 and January 2018, a time in which Bitcoin gained a lot of value. The estimated amount that was stolen is valued at $2 million, that's in addition to the collateral damage it caused. Our next entry is North Hollywood Shootout. This robbery was not successful for the people executing. Instead, it ended up becoming a shootout, and is now used as the reason for the local police departments to carry around military-style equipment such as rifles. Larry Phillips Jr. and his partners in crime, Emil Matasaranu. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name properly, as that's a crime against words. These two have been successful at robbing 2 banks with military equipment. This was going to be their third, but things got out of control as they entered the vault of the bank and realized that the safes contained way less money than they thought. In their frustration, they fired into the vault and ruined some of the bills that were inside. They managed to gather around $300,000, but when they tried to escape the building, they started firing at civilians and unprepared police officers. They even fired at a police helicopter that was stationed above the building. The shootout ended up taking the lives of Larry and Emil, as well as the lives of 12 police officers and 8 civilians. Our next entry is Kalemba Bank Robbery. Movies have been an inspiration to a lot of people around the world, even the bank robbers. The heist at this bank in India took its inspiration from the Bollywood film called The Whom, a movie in which the robbers execute a heist by digging a hole through the floor of the bank with a fortune inside. In real life, a man named Avani Yampara called Joseph, who was also known as Babu, rented an empty restaurant space underneath the Kerala Bank and pretended to be renovating the space. During a long holiday weekend, Babu and his team cracked a hole through the floor of the bank and were able to open the safes. They managed to escape and hid in a place called Kozhikode, and they were able to mislead the police and keep them from finding them. But all of that changed one day when the police finally intercepted one of their phone calls and found their hiding spot. Our next entry is the United California Bank Heist. It was 1972 when Amil Dencio put together a gang of 6 robbers and flew them all to California all the way from the Midwest. Their goal was to rob a bank where supposedly President Nixon kept a fortune. Prior to robbing the bank, the gang stayed at a townhouse. They then went and dynamited their way into the vault of the United California Bank to steal around $30 million worth of cash, as well as other valuables. No one knew of their identity, so they made sure to scrub down the townhouse before they escaped. Unfortunately for them, they forgot to scrub down the dishwasher, and that was how the police were able to find their fingertips and identify them. Also, they gave a generous tip to a taxi driver before they left, which pretty much gave away their identity. Our next entry is the Knightsbridge Vault Robbery. For a man who made a career as a criminal by participating in over 50 different robberies, the robbery at the Knightsbridge Vault was a piece of cake. His name was Valerio Visay, and all he had to do was enter the bank during regular hours as someone who wanted to rent a safe deposit box. Once he and his armed partner were inside, they pulled out their guns and subdued the manager and the security guards so more accomplices were allowed inside while putting up a sign that the safe deposit box center was temporarily closed. Valerio and his gang were able to walk away with 62 million sterling pounds in cash. On top of all that as well, they got jewels and other valuables. That is very close to $100 million. Valerio managed to make it all the way to South America and spent a part of his life free from trouble. But he was quickly intercepted when he tried to go back to the UK to get his Ferrari Testarossa. Our next entry is the Great Train Robbery. You've probably seen enough movies, read enough books, and played enough rootin' tootin' cowboy shootin' 2 to know about train robberies. And if you haven't watched those movies or read those books, then I'm sure at least you've heard about them. All of them were inspired by this peculiar train robbery that happened in the 60s in the UK, and it took several months to devise this plan. A gang of 15 robbers came together and decided to rig the trackside signal so the train would stop at a very remote location. By then, the train conductor would be overpowered by the number of robbers and would be helpless in the middle of nowhere. And just like that, the gang was able to take valuables that were worth around 2.6 million sterling pounds, which was roughly $4.1 million. Can you imagine all of that money in the 60s? Those guys became super rich, and they became the inspiration for a lot of the train robbery fiction stories that you hear about today. Our next entry is the U.S. Inside Job. It was September 12 of 1997 when 6 men came together to rob the Dunbar Armored Facility in Los Angeles, California. It happened on a Friday night, and besides being the largest cash robbery in U.S. history, it also became known for being an inside job. The mastermind behind the whole operation was Alan Pace III, a regional safety inspector who worked for Dunbar, a company that handles cash. This man called 5 of his childhood friends for a little adventure that would make them all rich. All they had to do was ambush the guards at a cash drop vault on that Friday night, and once they gained access to the vault, they took everything they could and put it inside a U-Haul and left. They could have gotten away with it, except for the fact that one of Alan's friends gave up and ended up confessing. But up until today, the fate of half of the money that was stolen has not been explained. It said that they stole around $18.9 million, so at least $9 million hasn't been found yet. Our next entry is the Securitas Depot Robbery. While the Dunbar Armored Facility robbery was the largest cash robbery in the US, the Securitas Depot robbery was the largest cash robbery in the UK. But at Securitas Depot, they stole more than $80 million. So we're talking about a lot of cash. And in order to get that money, the criminals went a bit more violent than most of the people we've seen so far. They started by kidnapping the manager and his family while posing as police. Once they took control of the manager and his employees, they forced the manager to open the cash cages, and that's how they got the money. And like most of the thieves in these stories, most of the ones involved in this robbery got caught and were convicted. But there are rumors that one of them is still out there, living his best life in the West Indies with the money that he got from this heist. Now it's time for the day's best pick. The picture I chose for the day shows us what happens when a criminal is caught. They're chased by the police and taken to prison. While this picture is from a massive operation in Italy that was related to illegal substances, it still gives us an idea of what happens when people get involved in a crime. The 2 cases at the top of this list are probably the biggest bank robberies ever, and I bet you won't guess where they happened. Let's check them out with Central Bank of Iraq. Well, there goes the mystery on one of them. This is considered the biggest heist in history, and according to some sources, it was ordered by the infamous Saddam Hussein a few days before the US invaded his country. It is said that Hussein had his son Qusay steal nearly $1 billion from the central bank in Baghdad. There's even a note that served as after the crime that was signed by Hussein himself, where it's instructed that the money is withdrawn from the bank and given to his son. It is said that Qusay and an unknown person spent around 5 hours loading a lot of money into a vehicle that was later taken to an undisclosed location. As of today, no one knows for sure how much cash is missing, but there's a rumor going around that claims around $650 million were found in one of Hussein's buildings during one of the raids. But even though $1 billion sounds like a lot, it still doesn't top the robbery that earned a spot in the Guinness World Records book. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. That being the Reichsbank robbery. The one robbery that holds the Guinness World Record as the largest one in history is the one that happened at the Reichsbank while Germany was collapsing at the end of World War II. That's right. Some people thought it was a great idea to steal gold while their whole nation was in chaos. A bit messed up, yes, but hey, opportunity. The only problem about this robbery is that it's hard to determine how much was actually stolen. It is said that the amount of gold that was taken was valued at around 2.5 billion pounds in 1984 prices, which would be way more in today's economy. However, a lot of the money taken from the bank was in foreign bonds, so it's hard to tell if the amount taken was that high. The value of the robbery was set based on the amounts that were supposed to be in the bank. All of that is confusing, but one thing is for sure. A lot of money was taken in one of the craziest events in history. These are all the robberies I wanted to show you today. Which one do you think was the craziest? Do you know of any other stories that we didn't cover today? Let us know down in the comments section down below. With all that said and done, that's our video for today, and I will see you all next time. Later, everybody.